structure, because see, if you're going for SIN, then if we go for a incoming and outgoing both type of exercises, then we should will do material management configuration, required configuration, as well as the sales and distribution required configuration. So first of all, let us finalize the structure of a, which we generally call it enterprise structure. So we'll use the default company code which is given by SAP 1110. After that, we'll create a plant. Here we'll do one thing. We'll create one plant as a manufacturing plant. Let's say 1000 is my manufacturing plant, and second plant, let's say 2000, it will be considered as logical plant. Logical plant, or we may say that this is our depot. So what will happen, we assume that we have produced some goods at plant 1000, and after that we'll transfer that material to plant 2000. So here our stock transfer or scenario comes in picture. Okay, so in India, whenever you want to do any kind of stock transfer, then excise play a role in your stock transfer, because you cannot withdraw material without paying excise from your manufacturing plant.
Okay.
So here our one scenario will be completed. Fine. Now after that, let's say we'll create few store locations. Okay, let's say we'll create one store location for raw material, one store location for spare parts. Okay, another store location for finished goods. Now, where this excise will be applicable. Okay, as I said that whenever you want to move any goods out of your factory, excise comes in picture. Whether it is your sale or your transfer of stock or your subcontracting. Okay, in all this scenario, you'll have to pay excise. In many cases, we say that we have paid excise. In many cases, we say that we transferred excise to another unit. Okay, so here in the first case, we'll talk about incoming goods. Okay, so what will be our incoming goods? Either you can go for raw material purchase or you'll go for semi-finished material purchase. So here we'll create a few materials. Let's say our first material is ROH category. Rupesh, I'm assuming that you are aware about all this, right?
Yes, yes.
Materials, ROH category. In that, we'll create one material. Okay, and during this material purchase, and your normal process, PO and all that, will PO, then GRN. Then here, an excise comes in picture. So here, we'll capture excise invoice. We'll capture our excise invoice and we'll post it. Now, this is the only one scenario where we are talking about the incoming goods. Now this incoming goods belong to ROH category. Okay, means this is my raw material. So it will, for different type of categorization, we use different type of excise registers. Okay, and the excise register like RG23A for your incoming goods, it may be your raw material and spares. Okay, this was about the raw material, but many times we procure the capital item also. Suppose your company decided to expand their production capacity, and now your procurement is for expansion of plant, means it is investment, it is your capital investment. So if we talk about the capital investment, the excise rules are more or less same, but we have to use different excise register to capture capital investment, so that by the period of time you'll have a details like how much excise need to pay on your revenue items, as well as how much excise you need to pay on your capital item. It is a government rule. Okay, so here is another excise register comes in picture, which we call it RG23C. Okay, now if I talk, let's talk little uh, detail about RG23A. As I said, whenever suppose you procured a, let's say, a pen, and pen is excisable item. First thing, the basic thing is to understand is that every item is not excisable item. Okay, there are many items which are exempted out of excise. Okay, so if your item is not excisable, then your normal process of procurement, PO creation, GN will take place. Okay, but if your item is excisable item, okay, then first of all you'll have to generate one chapter ID in your system. That chapter ID is, we can say, the unique serial number of that type of material. It is provided by Government of India. Okay, so first of all, one thing comes in picture, which we call it chapter ID. Okay, what chapter ID tells us? It is a unique identification number for group of material. Like you'll have a one chapter ID 6, say this one for steel. Here I'm not specifying, here I'm not going to specify which kind of steel, whether it will be a rod, bar, C channel, H channel. I'm not going to specify steel. Then in a similar way, you'll have a one chapter ID for fuel. Okay. Now what is the role of this chapter ID? First of all, as I said, that it is a unique ID number for group of material. So on basis of this, you can get different kind of reports, and this chapter ID play a role of controller in your excise process. Now, so first of all, we'll define a chapter ID, and in one there is one transaction. That transaction is called J1 ID. In J1 ID transaction, we define the relationship between your material and chapter ID. And in other word, we can simply say, if your material is excisable, then your first step to activate excise for that material is to make a relationship between material and chapter ID in J1 ID transaction. Okay. So that was about the RG23A part. See, chapter ID combination will be same for whether RG23A, C, D, or RG23A. Okay. Now, now your procurement will take place. Then you'll capture your excise. So we capture excise in two parts. So first we call it part one. Commonly, I mean, after few days, week, after few days, after we talk in this language, we have captured excise of part one, part two. Okay, part one entries are taken at the time of goods receipt. Okay, and we can say the part one is some kind of parking. What happen when you take a goods receipt? You can, if your material is excisable, you can capture excise within Migo transaction. Here, you'll capture the part one details only. In part one detail, hello Rupesh, what happened? Hello,
Yes, sorry, I lost connection.
no issue.
Can you repeat it from that chapter ID?
Okay, so chapter ID is a relationship between your material and a one unique number, which is provided by Government of India. Now you'll have these kind of unique numbers. Like this number will represent steel. I'm not going here. I'm not going to mention the type of steel. I simply said it is steel. Okay, like if I give example from SAP, your material grouping type of thing, where you can group several materials by considering their characteristic. Okay, this chapter ID, we can say that if you want that your material is should be excisable, then the first step is to maintain material in J1 ID. After that, your complete excise process will start.
Okay.
Then suppose you have taken a goods receipt and your material is excisable. Then we capture excise in two parts. Okay, the part one and part two. Part one is captured during your goods receipt, which is in Migo transaction itself. And what kind of detail we capture in part one? We capture only quantitative details in part one. Okay, now understand here. Suppose I am a vendor and I am going to supply you a material. Okay, and that material is excisable. So, along with my invoice, I'll provide you the excise invoice. Okay, so that excise invoice will have a one number, which we call vendor excise invoice. Okay, but we cannot go on basis of vendor excise invoice because we'll have a multiple vendor we. Okay, so because of that reason, we create one internal number for every excise invoice which we capture. That number is called internal excise number. Okay, now as we entered this excise invoice first time in system, then we can track this excise invoice number in both ways, either by using vendor excise invoice or by using internal excise number. Okay, now during Migo transaction, we take part we hello.
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, so During Migo transaction, we capture part one. In part one, as I said, we capture the quantity details of our excise invoice. Okay, here in part, we can say the part one is like your parking of invoice, or we can say the inbound delivery kind of thing, where we'll simply capture the excise quantity details and we'll assume that material is arrived. Now, after that, we capture part two. In part two, let's say in part two, we'll capture the excise values like your BED, which is basic excise duty, if SCD, special excise duty, education says, higher education says. Okay, so all these details about the value will be captured under the part 2 part. Now here, when we capture this detail in part 2, system pass one accounting entries. Okay, uh, let us talk in this way. Suppose my material basic cost is, let's say, 10 INR. Now here is the excise of 1.5 INR. So my material cost, final material cost will be, now this 1.5 is a part of excise. Okay, there are two. Now if we talk about the excise, little depth, then uh, there are two. Again, we can say that there are again a differentiation on basis of creditable and non-creditable. That we will talk later during our classes. Okay, so now see, this is a industry standard. What happened? You received the material when you punch his invoice in Myro, then system will what exactly the Myro does, Rupesh?
Uh, it posts the invoice, whatever we receive from the vendor.
Mm,
It will create a vendor account and GRR account.
correct. Then, so in a simpler word, we can say that when we take a goods receipt, at the time of goods receipt, our payment liability gets generated. Okay, so and at the time of Myro, system nullify our payment liability. Okay, so during this invoice verification process of Myro, system nullify our liability of payment. So here every company use different general ledgers. Like if we talk about the common general ledgers, your stock account, your inventory account, your material consumption account, your GRIR account. Okay, but these are a very commonly used general ledger account. Now, for the excise part, we can create a separate tracking. How? Suppose I'm talking about the goods receipt entry, GR entry. At the time of GR, suppose your stock, generally you'll have these two accounts at the time of GR. Okay, GRIR. Now, if your material is excisable, then What generic company does? They say my total liability is 11.5. Here, I'll create another GL. Here, I'll create another GL for BED where I'll say I'll pass zero point 0.9. Education says say 0.3, 0.4. Then higher education says zero point 0.2. In this way, a total accounting entry will be passed at the time of GR. Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Yes. So you have to maintain this, enter this condition manually, or it will be captured automatically by the system?
see Rupesh, this comes under the OBYC part.
Yeah.
This comes under the OBYC part.
Yeah.
Once it is fixed, how the excise works, we create a text code, and in text code we define a rate of excise. Okay, so suppose we created one text code, say 6A, and we said that uh, 12% excise is applicable with 2 and 1 as education and higher education says. Okay, so at the time of text code creation, we have some setting in OBYC where we can map a general ledger account for every individual values 12, 2 and 1. This is a common
Yes.
practice where whenever you open
Yes.
any company's account and if material is excisable, you'll find a different deals for every component. Here I will talk about only BED and sales and education sales. Suppose material is applicable on VAT and sometime
Oh,
additional VAT. In that case, you'll have a different GL. Okay, this the purpose of creating these many GLs is that you'll have a clear idea. I mean, your accounting team will have a clear detail that how much BED they paid, how much cess they paid, how much VAT they paid.
yes.
Okay, so during this GR, this entities will be passed. Now, during Myro, what will happen? System will nullify all these entities. Means system will clear the liability of payment which was generated at the time of GRN. Here, system is generating liability by using GRIR account.
Yes.
Okay, so so this is our part one entries where we'll capture the quantitative details. Second, part two entries where we'll capture excise values. Now, what happens? You'll keep on, you'll have a multiple items coming daily, and you are capturing their excise details. Okay, uh, in RG23A. See, the behavior of RG23A and RG23C is similar. But difference is that one is used for your capital investment, second is used for your revenue expenses. Okay, so these are the two registers which we use. Apart from this, there's one other register which we call RG23D. Okay, this RG23D register is specifically used for your depot transfers. Okay, Suppose you have one plant at Mumbai, and you have a multiple distribution depots across the India. So what you'll do, you'll produce material here in Mumbai. After that, you'll just send material to your depots across the India. So during this process, you'll have to give one invoice along with your material. So in that case, what will happen? Your excise value will be passed on to your depots. Okay, and for that purpose, there are some statutory requirement that first of all you'll have to create your depot as an excisable depot. Okay, for that you need to take a government permission. They'll give you the unique excise number, identification number, excise registration number, collectorate number of excise range, and all that. Okay, they'll give you the unique excise number. So you could, after that you have to maintain this number in your system. Suppose this is my manufacturing plant. I'll add one more plant here to make it little complicated. This is 3000 is my depot 2. Okay, so if you want to move material from 1000 to 3000, you'll have to pay excise. Yeah, not pay exactly. You'll transfer your excise from 1000 to 3000. While if you pay 1000 to 2000, similar way. But what will happen when you pass on your duties? You will transfer your material from 2000 to 3000. Here, what is happening? This is a inter depot transfer. Okay, so suppose you transfer material from 1000 to 2000. Here, entries will be captured in RG23D. Okay, and now when you pass on this material to 3000, RG23D will be again in picture. Here, system will remove entries from RG23D 2000 plant and it will credit to 3000 plant.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a depot procedure. Okay, so as I given you example of mm, what is a chapter ID and the basic concept of excise, that excise part, the different registers of excise, and how we can bifurcate excise into different GLs.
So this part one and part two after Migo, do we have to maintain manually or during posting of gear these will be created automatically?
See, part one can be captured during Migo.
Okay.
Okay, and see, it is again on the practice of the company. What happened in many organization, so store department is responsible for excise also. In that case, we can capture both in your Migo. But suppose if you have a one department of a store, their role is just to take a goods receipt, and you have another department which will be take care about the excise part. In that case, part two will be part two entry will be passed by your separate department.
Okay.
Simply, we can say the meaning of part one here is that we are just linking a vendor excise invoice number with our GRN number.
Okay.
So that was about the incoming goods. Now what about outcoming? So outgoing goods. So same excise rule is applicable and all the see the basic setting will remain same. There are a few change in the settings for outgoing products. Okay, which we will see in detail during our classes. I'll just brief you here. The basic part will remain same, but here another excise register will come in picture. That register is called RG1. Okay, so if I just brief you, if I just brief about the excise payable part. So whatever you procured or your incoming excise, the difference between your incoming and outgoing excise is your excise liability, payable liability to Government of India.